And I want to give a major shout out to Mike Tag. Keep bringing the hype to the Cowboys Nation. We love and appreciate it. Now, can you dig it? Let's get it.
What's up, Cowboys Nation? What is up, Cowboys Nation? Mike Tag here for another special edition. You know, we did the top 5 Dallas Cowboy running backs all time. That is a lot of fun. Hopefully you had a chance to see it. If you didn't, you better go back and watch it. Now we're going to do the top 5 Dallas Cowboy receivers of all time. So this is going to be a lot of fun. If you agree with it, disagree, have some people I left off, maybe some people you want to add on, shift the order around, make sure you leave a comment. But if you're doing that, you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button too. And any one of you guys, make sure you hit that like and share it with Cowboys Nation. We got a lot of great content going on here. We got live shows on Monday with Jimmy Dee. We got Thursdays with my man Kelly K9 talking all Cowboys, everything in between. We've had 20 NFL former player interviews. We've had coaches, Coach Switchers coming to the cave. Coach Campo's coming to the cave. Eugene Lockhart's coming to the cave. Make sure you don't miss that one. We had Rick Upchurch talking about the other side of the rivalry with the Broncos and Cowboys in the Super Bowl. We had JT Thomas of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Steel Curtain talking about the rivalry in the 70s. We had some Washington Redskins in the house talking about the best rivalry in football back in the day. So we've had a lot of fun. So you don't want to miss it. We've had a lot of great Cowboys entering the cave, and we got a lot more coming in. So make sure, if you guys are new to the channel, hit that subscribe. Also hit that little bell alert to make sure you don't miss anything, because we do go live all the time. We got a lot of things planned. We got our first annual Cowboys Cave tailgate party, opening day when we slap, the home opener, I should say, when we slapped the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers around and finally, get rid of that curse. So without further ado, let's get into this, man, because you guys are here to see what I think of the top 5 Dallas Cowboy receivers of all time. So we're going to go with number 5. Number 5 on the list, we're talking about Tony Thrill Hill. So this man came in the late 70s. He got a Super Bowl ring with the Cowboys, but he wasn't an impact player then. I don't even think he even played. He didn't even play in that game, but he got the ring, got the hardware, because he was there for that season. So we're talking about Tony Hill. Just, he was a number 2 for a few years with Drew Pearson until Drew Pearson went on to retire, and then Tony Hill took it over. 3-time Pro Bowler, of course, was a receiver I grew up watching as a kid, because Pearson was kind of near the end of his career. So Tony Hill is the one I remember. It was Tony Hill, I think Mike Renfro were the receivers, and Doug Cosby at tight end, Tony Dorsett running the ball, and then obviously you mix in some Herschel Walker, late in the later years. But those are the Cowboys of the 80s. But Tony Hill was interesting because he was part with Roger Staubach in the transition to Danny White and the dominant team in the 70s that had those consecutive NFC championship games that just couldn't get over the hump, in those games to get back to the Super Bowl in the early 80s, and then kind of dipped down into the mid 80s to some rougher years for these Cowboys. But he was an impact player, and number 5, some could argue should be a little bit higher, but I'm going to go with number 5, because my number 4 guy, I think, just, for me, the impact that he had with the Cowboys, I think I've got to put him there. So we are talking number 4, Dallas Cowboy wide receiver all time. We got to talk about Dez Bryant throwing up the X, an 88, part of the 88 club, and a pristine member of the 88 club. And he just came into the league and he started off fast. Obviously, a lot of special teams. You saw that punt return for a touchdown. He did a lot early on his rookie year. We're not going to count special teams. That can't factor into the decisions. We can only talk about, the wide receiver and what they did on offense. So for Dez Bryant, 531 receptions, 3rd all time, 7,400 plus yards, 5th all time, and obviously number one all time in touchdowns. He was a touchdown machine for the Cowboys. He had 73 touchdowns all time. Three-time Pro Bowler, made the All Pro, led the NFL in receiving touchdowns in 2014 with 16. He had three 1,000-yard receiving seasons. That's kind of surprising when you think about the era that he played in, but that's where I'm telling you, he was very dominant for that period of time. And it's kind of, you look back, it's like, man, I thought that was forever. Played 8 seasons, but had a lot of injury-plagued seasons, which shortened him up from building up those stats, and probably didn't help his case of moving up the list in the all-time Cowboys. But he had only 3 playoff games. That didn't help, but had 15 catches, 218 yards, a couple touchdowns. He wasn't a problem in the playoffs for the Cowboys not moving on. We all know the Dez catch. That's historic in the playoffs, but he made big plays. And the thing about Dez Bryant, it's always interesting to me, he is still, I would say, probably the most popular player in Cowboys history who didn't win a ring. He's still loved by the fans. He still interacts with the fans on social media, on Twitter, and all that stuff. He does tailgate parties. I don't know if it'd be good as our tailgate party. The Cowboys tailgate party, but he does a great tailgate party, opportunity to meet the fans and stuff. So he's one of those guys. He's my son's favorite player. He still doesn't understand how Dez isn't in the league, but he's just one of those guys. He's just likable. So he's in the 88 club. We got to be well represented in the 88 club if you're talking top 5, Cowboy receivers of all time. So Dez Bryant is checking in at number 5. So we got to think, all right, well, we got 5 out of the way. Excuse me. Dez Bryant was number 4 in the top 5. So who is going to be number 3? And we've got, now you're getting up there to the elite status, and we're going to go with number 3. We're going with Drew Pearson, the OG of the 88 club, Drew Pearson. And some say, Mike, man, what are you doing? He's got to be higher. But let's just run through it, and then we can debate it. He's a Hall of Famer. He's in the Cowboys Ring of Honor. He had 489 receptions, 4th all-time, 7,822 yards, 4th all-time, 48 touchdowns, 7th all-time, 3-time Pro Bowler, all-decade team in the 70s, Super Bowl champion we talked about, 2 years of 1,000-yard plus seasons. He led the NFL in receiving yards in 1977. Of course, the Hail Mary, big games in the playoffs, big plays in big games, big-time players make big plays in big games, as my man Santana Moss from the U always said. 22 playoff games in his career, 67 receptions, 1,100 plus yards and 8 touchdowns in those games. So he absolutely played big when it mattered. And, as great of a player as he was, he's probably a better person off the field from everything I've seen. I've only met him, once in a public event. So, but he just seems like a genuine person, great guy. And all these guys, all these top 5 guys are members in the Cowboys cave. I mean, if you're a top 5 Cowboy, you better be in this cave, or something's wrong with me. Might have to stop me not being, having the proud, esteemed privilege of having such a great Cowboys cave and calling this Cowboys cave if I don't have been there. So Drew Pearson's number 3. And then we'll get into why, if you guys think he should be number 2 or higher. I'm going to give you my 2 guys. You probably know who they are. Maybe you don't know the order, but we'll get into that. And then we can debate it a little bit, either through the chat or when we do our live shows. I'd love to get your opinions on it. So number 2 for me is, it's tough. Some say, oh, it's a no-brainer. Who's going to be number 1 or whatever. But it was a tough decision because you're talking about number 2. He changed the game. And we're talking about Bullet Bob Hayes. Do all these guys have great nicknames? All our Cowboys receivers, they've got great nicknames. That's one thing we got. But you're talking Bullet Bob Hayes. He changed the way defenses played because of his speed. You're talking an Olympic athlete, medalist. I mean, he was, probably one of the greatest athletes the Cowboys ever had. And he was the original 22. A lot of people I love Emmitt Smith, but Bullet Bob Hayes was the OG of the 22. Maybe we need to have a 22 club, but Hall of Famer. Ring of Honor, which there's only 22 members in the Ring of Honor. Cowboys are pretty tight with that. Let's hopefully they increase that quickly and get Jimmy Johnson in there, but that's for another show. 3-time Pro Bowler. He had 2 1,000-yard receiving seasons in an era where they didn't throw the ball first. They ran. He led the NFL in receiving touchdowns twice. He led the NFL in yards per receptions twice. Career yards per reception was 20 yards a catch. 26.1 in one season, 24 in another season. They had 13 playoff games, 31 receptions, 492 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's 8th all-time in receptions with 365, 6th all-time in yards at 72.95, 3rd all-time with 71 touchdowns, 365 receptions, 71 touchdowns. Do the math. That percentage is pretty damn good. He was a touchdown machine, but he was a big play guy, and they had to change the defenses and the coverage in the secondary because you couldn't go man-to-man with Bob Hayes. It was over. And just a great career. Never got to see him play. He's got a spot in the cave. Got to have a spot in the cave for Bullet Bob Hayes. But I never got to see him play. Read a lot about him. Obviously watched a lot. So I can only go on the history and talking to people who watched in that era and to compare something to. And that's why I always say with receivers, it's not always about the numbers. You got to look at how they were in their era. The receivers today, it's just a different era. It's a lot of pass, a lot of yards, a lot of, so that you're piling up stats well above what any of these guys, have. So you got to look at the eras. Now we talk about, well, before we get to number one, which, I mean, if you're a Cowboys fan, if you don't know who number one is, then we got some issues. But before we get to number one, we want to have an honorable mention. And the interesting thing is some of these Cowboys, when you went to 5, like who could break the 5? It was hard. The one for me, believe it or not, was T.O. His 3 years in Dallas were absolutely dominant, double-digit touchdowns every year. I mean, he was he was phenomenal with the Cowboys, but he played, didn't have the longevity as a Cowboy. I don't really consider him a Cowboy like I would Tony Hill, so I couldn't bump Tony Hill out. And then you had some other guys. You had, Golden Richards, who, didn't put up the numbers, but man, Golden, man, they got to be a great receiver. If name's Golden, you got to be, flashy. But he's a good receiver. Frank Clark, who played again, early times in the 60s. He's still like 7th all time in receptions, but I didn't know a lot about him. So I couldn't really put him on the list, to be fair. CeeDee Lamb, I didn't put anyone who's playing now. CeeDee Lamb, I think the way his career is going, I think he's going to have a spot in that top 5. And then it's going to be littered with the 88 club and Bob Hayes mixed in the middle, in my opinion. But CeeDee Lamb he's doing all the right things and sky's the limit for him. I think he's just getting better and better every year. And then you look at some of these Cowboys that came later in the career. So yeah, you couldn't really put him on there, but Rocket Ismail, he had some nice years with the Cowboys. Joey Galloway, we gave up 2 first-round draft picks, but on the field, of course, from getting injured the first game of coming to Dallas, he put together some nice years with the Cowboys during some, during not the best times with the Cowboys. Keyshawn Johnson, came later on his career, and I think one of the underrated Cowboys who came over later was Terry Glenn. Terry Glenn, I thought he had some nice, not great, but really good years with the Cowboys and key catches. And another one would have been Anthony Miller, who was with Denver and I think San Diego Chargers. He came over to the Cowboys and he had a couple years with them, and that was, more into the late, after the kind of the 90s run of the Cowboys, was just kind of ending. So, the Cowboys have had some names at receiver. There's no doubt about it, but there's no bigger name and there ain't no better name than, number one on this list. And that's got to be, Michael Irvin, the playmaker. And I'm not being biased because he's from the U. I'm a Miami guy. This guy, not only the greatest Cowboy receiver of all time, but I could argue, if you let me argue with you enough, he's one of the greatest NFL receivers of all time. He's just he never had the huge stats because he didn't throw a lot, but you're talking about big plays, big catches, demanded the ball in key situations. He wasn't sitting on the bench. 3rd down, he used to tell you, that ball better be coming to me or we're going to have a problem. He was dominant, won a championship, and he says this often. He won a championship on every level he's played. Not many guys can do that from high school to college to professional. He's always been a winner, and that means something. 3-time Super Bowl champion, second all-time in receptions, but number one for wide receivers at 750. Second all-time in receiving yards, but number one for wide receivers. Witten, got both of those at over almost 1,200 yards. 65 touchdowns, puts him fourth all-time. 5-time Pro Bowler, was an All-Pro. He was a 3-time All-Pro, two-time on the second team, 1-time first-team All-Pro, 90s All-Decade team, three-time Super Bowl champion. Can we get a little more? Can we get some more championships, please? It's been too long. Nicknamed the playmaker, and I mean, that just goes with it, man. He was the playmaker. He led the NFL in receiving yards with over 1,500 yards. 7 years of 1,000-yard plus receptions, 7 seasons of that. Playoffs, made a career in the playoffs, 16 games, 87 receptions, 1,300 plus yards, 8 touchdowns. He had an NFL record in the season, 11 100-yard games during a season, which I think is, if it's not and maybe it's not a record today. Maybe Calvin Johnson, one of those guys, might have, Marvin Harrison, one of those guys probably broke it, but at the time it was an NFL record. And I mean, he did it all. And he was the leader of the team. He was and if you watch some interviews back in the team in the 90s, I love the 90s. Those were great. It's great times of my life, man. I thought that's just the way it was going to be, winning all these Super Bowls. Little did I know it was going to be 27 years of heartache, but I think we're going to be getting back. We got a great team, coming back, and I think they're right there. But Michael Irvin, he was the lightning rod. He was the leader when no one practiced harder than him. No one pushed players harder than him. He demanded everything, and he was the vocal leader of the Cowboys. And I always say, his career ended too short. 10-year career, but it ended on a season-ending injury. And it was really unfortunate, because I think when you saw that, you saw the decline of the Cowboys really take shape. And I just think that had a huge impact, more than some people, probably know, because the way he was in practice and the leadership and what he demanded of players, there was no one better than Michael Irvin. And, he's revered as probably the most popular Dallas Cowboy next to Roger Staubach. I mean, he's an approachable guy. He's a great guy. When you get a chance to meet him, he's funny as anything. I just miss him. Him and Deion Sanders. If you go back in time when they used to do the post game show on NFL Network of all the highlights, there was nothing better. There was nothing better than having those guys. I mean, they were just so funny. And growing up in South Florida didn't hurt. You got to score some brownie points at me with that. And going to the U and delivering a national championship gets you more points, but 3 Super Bowls for the Cowboys gets even more points. So that's my top 5. You're talking about, we'll recap it. You got Tony Hill, number 5. You got Dez Bryant throwing up the X at number 4. You got Drew Pearson, number 3. You got Bullet Bob Hayes, number 2. And you got the playmaker, Michael Irvin, as my greatest Cowboys receiver of all time. I need to know from you guys, did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Do I at least have the 5 in there, but maybe you have a different order? You guys need to leave a comment. Let me know. If you're new to the channel, like I said, make sure you guys hit that subscribe. Make sure you hit that little bell, a little alert, so when we go live, you guys don't miss it. But that's my top 5. I might do another one. I'm thinking about maybe switch it to the defense. Maybe go cornerback, middle linebacker, pass rusher. We're going to figure something out. But I enjoy doing this. Hopefully you guys like it too. But make sure, again, like, subscribe, share. If you love your boy Mike Tag, that's the best way that you can help me and the channel to support it. Doesn't cost you anything. And you're doing me a solid and getting the word out, because we love doing this. I love doing it. And we're having a great time with our live shows. And we've got a lot of plans coming up during the season. Your boy's going to be at a ton of games. So I hope to see you guys there. The hype videos, man. I've been holding back. I've been doing these cameos. If you guys ever need to get hype, you can go ahead and go on Cameo and you can order me up, and I will drop any hype video you want. The only thing I won't do is bash the Cowboys. So if you're a hater and you're looking for me to do that, I will decline it, because I'm not doing it. But if you need me to give some birthday shout outs to some Cowboy fans, or you need me to propose to your woman because you're a little shy, I can handle that. You need me to be your best man at your wedding, I do all that kind of stuff. So I have a lot of fun with it. I enjoyed actually getting ready to drop another cameo now. So I will leave you guys. Again, I appreciate it. We will be back. Got a little hiatus, a little vacation break. So if you're catching this, during the playing of it, I'm on vacation. We'll be back the following week with our live shows. And of course, we'll be having a good time and getting ever so close to the start of NFL season. We're all looking forward to it. So I will see you guys. I will get you at 1. That's my top 5, Cowboys Nation. Can you feel me? Now, can you dig it? The Eagles getting ready, because you might not like it, but you will learn to love it, because we are the best thing going today. Now, can you dig it?